It's incredible to me that at least some MAGA Republicans, fundamentalist Christians who presumably believe in the Ten Commandments, consider convicted felon Donald Trump as having been sent by God to save America. Today, we're going to talk about that and more with Dr. Matthew Fox, an Episcopal priest who's written 42 books on culture and spirituality. Dr. Fox was expelled from the Dominican order after 34 years for, quote, being a feminist theologian, close quote, and preferring original blessing to original sin, not condemning homosexuality, and working too closely with Native Americans. How dare you? Fox has just written Trump and the MAGA movement as Antichrist, a handbook for the 2024 election, which is part of his effort to help keep Donald Trump out of the White House. By the way, you can find a link to that book in the description and notes for this episode. Dr. Fox, welcome to the Lean to the Left podcast, where we focus on the important social issues of our time.
Thank you, Bob. Good to be with you.
Now, you're a prolific author, a theologian, a man of God, Dr. Fox, and you've written a book about the dangers of Donald Trump. Tell me what prompted you to write that book, and why did you write it?
This summer, I was in Orvieto, Italy, in June, leading a workshop in honor of Thomas Aquinas because it was his 800th birthday. And he had worked in Orvieto and taught there. So I thought it was a good place to be. And I wandered into the cathedral, which was built in the late 13th century. It took a century or two to build it. But there is an amazing fresco in there inside a big chapel that was called the Antichrist. But I didn't see the title. I just stared at it for a while. And my first thought was, and I said it out loud to a friend who was with me, this feels like Donald Trump. And then I saw the title. Then I saw the title of the fresco, the Antichrist. And it was this fellow, we have a picture of it if we want to show it, where he's pointing at himself and the devil is whispering into his ear. And it was a very famous painting. And in fact, Sigmund Freud, who was not exactly famous for his love of religion,
Yeah, that's true.
he visited 3 times. He spent time in Orvieto to study this painting because it was so powerful. He said it was the most important painting of his life.
Wow.
And Freud loved art.
Uh-huh.
So just that alone was significant to me because that, if you will, represents the left-wing secular voting bloc in America.
Yeah.
And he was saying there's something to hold on to in this archetype of the Antichrist.
Okay.
And the more I studied the history of that painting and of Freud's effect, a whole book came out called Freud's Trip to Orvieto.
Oh, okay.
All about that one experience and how it changed his life. And he was a young man, relatively young. His father had died that year.
Mm-hmm.
And it just brought up a lot of stuff to him.
Wow. That's amazing. So that gave you the idea of Trump being the Antichrist. And so
previously, the right wing, the fundamentalists, have always run to this Antichrist thing. So I've never written about it because I feel they own it. They've owned it. But here I'm flipping it. I'm now applying it for those who believe in the common good and don't call themselves the right wing, therefore, to the general public and to a more liberating version of Christianity.
Okay. So why did you decide to release it now?
Of course, because of the election, I want to do what I can do. As Michelle Obama said, do something. So I felt that I could do this. I could seize this archetype from the right and put it out front and really confuse them and say it's not the left that's Antichrist, it's you. And take a harder look because this fellow is, first of all, he's such an accomplished liar, Trump is.
Yeah.
Was it 36,000 lies they counted his last presidency? And that's the tradition that Satan is the father of lies. And it's all downhill from there with Trump. He fills all the qualities of the Antichrist because, of course, there's the Christ and then the Antichrist. So everything that Christ talks about, compassion and forgiveness
Hmm.
and welcoming the stranger and all this,
Right. Right.
is opposite to Trump's entire message.
That's
And it's
true.
not just Trump. Notice the title is Trump and MAGA.
Yeah.
Under MAGA, I certainly include SCOTUS, the entire Supreme Court that has been bought and paid for by Opus Dei operative Leonardo Leo, and all these laws they've passed that have let the dark money flow into politics like never before, for example. And of course, I have a section on abortion. Is really just another word for men wanting to control women's bodies. That's what the abortion issue is. And MAGA, I'm saying it doesn't stand for Make America Great Again. It stands for Make America Grotesque Again. And by grotesque, slavery, Jim Crow, lynchings, and the genocide toward indigenous people. And this one really hits me, how there were 30 million buffalo in the plains in America in the 19th century. And
Yeah.
out of racism, the effort to destroy Indians because Native people counted so much on the buffalo, they
Hmm.
went after the buffalo. It went from 30 million to 500 buffalo in
Wow.
America in
Wow.
a few years.
Wow.
That's grotesque. The
It
whole
is.
thing is grotesque.
It
Bringing
is.
slaves from Africa.
Yeah.
America, that's not our whole story. We're not always grotesque, but I think what
Yeah.
MAGA is proposing is let's bring grotesqueness back again.
Especially with that 2025 project that they're ballyhooing about, that 800-page document that I guess is a platform for Trump if he should return to the White House.
Exactly. And the head of that thing is thoroughly in bed with Opus Dei again. And Opus Dei is this fascist Catholic movement within the Catholic Church that was brought back by Popes John Paul II and Benedict, who turned their back on the Second Vatican Council, which was a liberating movement that gave
Yeah.
birth to liberation theology and creation spirituality, which has been my thing. And it's just a new book just came out this week on Opus Dei. It was reviewed in the New York Magazine, and the title is How Opus Dei Conquered DC. And it is Opus Dei and that man, Leonardo Leo, who uh, got approved all these six judges in the Supreme Court that are far
Hmm.
right. And he also was the coach for Mitch McConnell when he turned down Obama's selection for a Supreme Court judge.
Yeah.
It was Leonardo Leo who coached Mitch legally on that whole thing. And that is all part of that right wing Catholic. We talk about the evangelical, they're the ones who provide the votes. But it's the Catholic right wing that is, say, it's this fascist wing in Catholicism, and includes Steve Bannon and Cardinal Burke and others. But they're the ones who are putting up the big money to go for the Supreme Court judges and these other big things. And Project 2025 has been manufactured mostly by that gang.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you decided that this would be something you could do to help keep Trump from getting back to the White House. Why put into words why you think that would be a horrible thing to have Trump back in the White House?
The Antichrist is a symbol for evil. It's the opposite for the symbol of the opposite of what Christ teaches, but it's also the opposite of what the Buddha teaches and Chief Seattle teaches
Hmm.
and Muhammad teaches. It's the opposite of authentic religion.
Hmm.
And the fact that Trump, as you pointed out in the introduction, has been held up as some kind of um, Christ-like figure, which he's more than eager to propagandize about, is not only ironic, but evil because it's the opposite of that which we cherish as truthful. And of course, the destruction of the planet, this denial, calling climate change a hoax,
Yeah.
which is a quote from Trump.
Yeah,
But to me,
absolutely.
the killing of the planet is just about the greatest evil that anyone could conceive of. And that denial that he's leading his party in is, and at the very moment that here we're sitting for this record breaking hurricane to land in Florida and everything. I mean, it's just so absurd. And but it goes along with that whole lying motif. It's the opposite of truth. In the Gospels, Christ is called the truth. But that's true again around the world, that truth is a synonym for the presence of the divine. Well, then lies and denial, which is a sophisticated way of lying, is evil too. So that's what we have in this archetype. We have a shortcut talking about evil. And I think it's time to employ it, because I think that there are enough people out there who care about good and evil to get their cages rattled. Carl Jung did a whole essay on the Antichrist as an archetype.
Mm-hmm.
And he said it's such a dangerous idea if we don't shed light on it, that you have to put light on these lies.
Okay.
And there's nothing particularly Christ-like about Trump and his messaging.
That's an understatement.
I was going to say, unless you want to argue about that. It is an understatement. It is. I was trying to be very subtle.
Yeah, you were very subtle, extremely subtle. This guy's so subtle that they threw him out of the church that he was involved with. Tell me about that. Why'd you get kicked out?
It's a badge that I try to wear lightly. I was protesting the misogyny.
You try to wear it lightly, huh?
I do. The misogyny of the church. And so they gave me a list of problems with me, 7 of them, I think. And the number 1 was, I'm a feminist theologian. I didn't know that was a heresy.
What is a feminist theologian? What is that? I don't even know what that is.
I write that God is as much mother as father.
Okay.
And we have to bring back the feminine energies into our consciousness, men and women alike.
Okay.
And the second objection was that I call God mother. But I prove that all the medieval mystics call God mother.
Okay.
And the Bible does on a few occasions, but not enough. And the third objection was, as you said, I don't condemn homosexuals. And of course, science told us about that in the 1970s. I think they should start reading a little more in the Vatican. It's perfectly natural for 8 to 10% of the human race to get over it. And we've now counted 1,500 other species that have gay and lesbian populations. So it's not unnatural, as a pre-scientific mindset would tell us. So those are some of the problems. I worked too closely with Native Americans. I had a Native American on my campus at Holy Names College, a Catholic liberal college in Oakland, California. He built a sweat lodge on campus. So we had sweats for faculty and staff and students, and it was marvelous. But I guess the word got back to the Vatican and they freaked out. What is this? It's the only campus in the world where people are doing sweats led by a Lakota teacher. And I was proud of that too.
People were doing sweats? What's that?
Yeah, sweat lodges. It's Native American practice.
Oh, sweat lodges. I understand.
Sweat lodges, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And it's a wonderful deep practice. It's not about praying by reading what page you're on in a book. It's about going into a sweat lodge where it's dark and hot, really hot.
Yeah.
My first 20 minutes into the sweat lodge, I was looking for an exit, and there wasn't one, or a fire extinguisher, and there wasn't one. So I realized I was going to die in there. And then I yielded to the experience, and that's what made it part. To go into an altered state.
Wow,
I
really?
came out much healthier. I had a bad back from a car accident at the time, and I came out physically and spiritually healthier because you go through something when you pray with Lakota people.
I got a bad back. Maybe I better call up my Native American friends here in South Carolina and ask them, hey, you got a sweat lodge I can go hang out in for a while.
I highly recommend it. There you go. Yeah.
Okay. All right. What do you say to the MAGA people who are backing Trump? What do you say to them? Especially when they use religion as a reason.
Especially if they use religion. Yeah, I say, what planet are you on? What Jesus do you listen to?
Yeah.
It's flabbergasting, really. But it shows the power of humans to make up our own stories. Which in itself was nice that we're creative like we are, but not when they're important. And I asked them, how important is saving the planet to you? Saving our species from extinction. And by the way, 100 million other species. How important is creation to you? Traditionally, there are 3 articles of faith: creation, redemption, and divinization, sanctification. But we leave creation out. And the fact is that in our time, we've learned these wonderful new stories from science. And the Hubble telescope, yeah, but now the new telescope, Webb telescope, is bringing back the glory and the wonder of this universe that we're part of. And it's such a spiritual thing, it's such a sacred thing. And it involves all of us. So why wouldn't we be utterly thankful and grateful for this existence we have that was birthed over a 13.8 billion years journey? Instead, we're getting ready to destroy this one very special planet that we can survive on. And it's utterly overflowing with beauty. And of course, the scriptures, the Psalms, and all this stuff, always talking about it. And of course, Jesus did too, the lilies in the valley and all this stuff. And of course, he was a farmer, peasant farmer, and he observed nature. All his stories are about nature. And he was so close to the earth. And how can we be degrading it like we are and say that has anything to do with the spirit or the teachings of Jesus and his ancestors? It's horrendous.
Okay.
Matricide, the killing of the mother. I think it fits into that pattern of misogyny and of what I call precarious manhood, precarious masculinity that you find in Trump
Mm-hmm.
and in so many of his followers. This is why guns are so important. They have to prove something, and the control of women's bodies under the guise of being against abortion. I think all this stuff, it fits. There's a pattern here. And it's the reptilian brain. It's that brain that never admits it loses. We're in a fight with a crocodile, it's win or lose. There's no compromise. That's the
right.
reptilian brain.
Yeah.
And they haven't moved to the mammal brain, which is what Jesus and Buddha and others are telling us to do. Because the mammal brain, where compassion plays out, where there's family, where there's kinship, where there's caring, and where there's forgiveness. And they haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
Stuck in that old brain.
Okay. While you were talking, I was thinking about what you were talking about before about when you were asked to depart from the Dominicans that drew you to the Episcopalians.
It's a story. I just finished a book called The Reinvention of Work, and the last chapter was on reinventing ritual. And then I sent it in the publisher, and I had a conference in Seattle, and these 6 young Anglican men and women had flown in from Sheffield, England, to talk to me. They had created a new way of doing liturgy based on rave, dance, DJ, VJ, and all that.
Right.
And they had articles about what they were doing, and it sounded terrific to me because I had just written this chapter on reinventing ritual, and bringing the body back was essential to it. So, make us long story short, I flew to Sheffield and checked it out, and I was really impressed what they were doing. I said, "How can I help you guys?" They said, "If you became an Episcopal priest, you could run interference because you know why you get us, why we're doing this. And already we're using your theology of the cosmic Christ and all that." So I thought about it, prayed about it, and the Pope had fired me at that time. So I was out of a job. He didn't need me anymore. So I went to the Episcopal bishop in San Francisco and I said, "Here's the deal. I want to become an Episcopalian priest, but just for one reason, to work with young people to reinvent worship using these new art forms that they have." And he said, "Go for it." He said, "We're not doing anything for the young." And I said, "One question, will you protect me from your right wing?" I said, "I've just had a 12-year fight with the Vatican, and I lost, and I'm not going through this again for religion's sake." And he said, "I'll tell you a story. I grew up in West Virginia, and I was a priest there during civil rights movement." And he said, "I took on the mining corporations about civil rights." He said, "I'm a street fighter. I may not read any of your books, but I'll fight for you." And I shook hands. I said, "Bishop, we can do business together." And he did defend me because he got flack from the right wing for what we were doing. And that's how it was born, that the Cosmic Mass was born.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. You have a website, Daily Meditations with MatthewFox.org. Tell me about that. What do you do there?
Well, first of all, it's free. You just register, sign up. And I talk about everyday life, and I try to interpret the stories of the time
Mhm.
in light of what I know of spirituality and theology,
Mhm.
and I
Mhm.
try to comment on issues. Recently, I talked about, of course, this new book on the archetype
Mhm.
of the Antichrist, but also I have a new book out for children called The Return of Father Sky, because I
Okay.
think we've got to reinvent masculinity and find its deeper meaning. I wrote a book on that a few years
Okay.
ago,
Is there
and
anything you haven't written a book on?
you tell me.
I don't know. You saw
That's my
42 books.
job.
I think you said 42.
It's my
That's inc
job. That everyone has their job, and
it's
that's mine.
true. But you have another job. Are you still an Episcopal priest?
I am, but I don't have a regular parish or anything
Oh,
like
you
that.
don't.
And
Oh,
of
okay.
course, I'm so old. I'm 83.
Ah, you got me by
There
two
you go.
years.
There
How
you
about
go.
that?
You're a kid.
Okay. All right. So basically, that meditations page is a series of brief essays, right?
That's right. Brief essays, and they've got some nice pictures and all that to go with
Uh-huh.
it because I have a
Uh-huh.
little team helping me with
Uh-huh.
that. Yeah.
Now, speaking of pictures, you sent me a whole bunch of pictures that you suggested maybe we could use with this podcast. There were a couple that intrigued me. We talked about them a little bit before we began this discussion. How about filling me in on those pictures and why you believe that they're relevant?
Great. Can we show one or
Yeah.
not?
Yeah, I'll show them.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a general painting of that fresco that so impressed me and Freud and a lot of other people too. And the preacher there is he's pointing at himself, which is narcissism. He's
Hmm.
listening intently to the devil in his ear. And if you look carefully, the devil's left arm and his arm are the same arm.
Okay.
So the lesson is you're not just hearing from the demonic, you're sharing deeds with the demonic. So you're doing things. And of course, that's what's going on with Trump. And by the way, the Antichrist picture, the fellow who's the Antichrist preaching away there, has a
Mhm.
hair problem too, like a certain presidential candidate we know. At first, I thought it was Christ preaching, and then I stared and I said, "There's something off center about this guy," and his hair has a problem, and there is like little horns are coming out under his hair. That's part of his problem. So he and the devil are very close, and I learned after my book came out that the Islamic word for Satan means the whispering one, which is really interesting because this guy's
Okay.
being whispered to.
He's whispering. That's the one that Signorelli, Antichrist, and the devil, right?
That's right. Yeah.
That's the one.
And
Okay.
then I have close-ups. One is the close-up of him and the
Yeah.
devil.
That's
And
a weird looking dude with those horns
it's a
coming
weird
out of his
looking dude.
head.
That's right. And the big general fresco, the painting there, it contains over 156 figures. There's a lot going on. People are listening to this preacher, but there's violence in the crowd. There's some in the crowd beating others up. There's some in the
Yeah.
crowd who are dead already and bloodied. So all
Yeah.
that reminded me of Trump. Trump has told his crowd to beat up
Okay.
journalists and so
All
forth.
right.
The energy there is very stark and violent and scary. And also some of the crowd, one person in the crowd is Christopher Columbus, which is really interesting because he sailed to America in 1492, and this was painting was finished in 1503. So he had come back and he was famous. He was the most famous person in Europe, and he's included in as a listener to this Antichrist. Now, whether he's going to go along with his preaching or not, I don't know. But it's like today's election; we're all subject to being listening to listeners to these kinds of messages. And then right in front of the podium the Antichrist is on, you see a
Uh-huh.
bunch of treasures that have been thrown there. These are, we're told, these are the dukes and the princes and the rich people, the Elon Musks of the day who were giving their wares over to the Antichrist. And in the background, there's pictures of people being resurrected from the dead and being healed because the Antichrist has power. I mean, you can't
Okay.
deny that Trump has power over a lot of people. And
Yeah,
he's
if
got
you look at this picture and
yeah,
and you pull it apart, man, there is a
yeah,
lot going on there.
a lot going on, a lot
Yeah,
going on.
that's for sure.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. You guys check it out because it's showing on the screen. Okay. Is
Got that
there
other
anything
picture
else we
from
need to talk about?
that other picture from Hildegard of Bingen is pretty
Oh
cool.
yeah. I wanted to ask you about that one.
Talk a little about that. So at the bottom, you see this figure on the left who is a woman, and that stands for Mother Church. But she's got blood, she's got red on her thighs. And Hildegard says that she's being abused by the Antichrist. And then if you look carefully, we don't have to look too carefully, there's a very large penis in the picture. Now remember, Hildegard is a saint and a doctor of the church. And this is an X-rated painting. I don't know what else to call it in 2024. She did it in the 12th century, but
Okay.
it is a painting about the Antichrist. And then there's this big black figure that kind of looks like a stealth bomber, and it has red eyes and teeth. And she says this is flying dung. It's SH blank T, and it's bull. It's BS that is
Okay.
coming out of the Antichrist. So I think what
Okay.
she is saying, and her unconscious is saying, is that patriarchy lies at the center of the problem here. And I end my book with a section on the precarious manhood and masculinity that is intrinsic, I think, to all fascism. And this is why there's such a compulsion to control women, control their bodies, and control them in general. And this was true of Mussolini and Hitler and Franco, and certainly of the right wing in America today, the far right wing.
Okay.
And Hildegard is, I think, speaking very profoundly. And then up in the right-hand corner, there's the Christ trying to bring peace to things. And there's also animals in the left-hand corner, because the Antichrist archetype was really born in the book of Apocalypse, the last book in the Christian Bible. And these animals are talked about there. And she says one stands for greed, another stands for making war, another stands for luxury living. And she says this is what's behind the unraveling of the universe, because all these animals have a rope in their mouth, and they're
Mm-hmm.
unraveling the order of the universe. So the Antichrist wants disorder. The Antichrist wants chaos. And
Wow.
that's one reason why the Antichrist is invested in lying,
Wow.
because lying and justice do not go together.
Okay.
Justice and truth do go together.
Okay.
So there are tremendous lessons in all this. But the bottom line for us might be, hey, a 12th century nun and saint, doctor of the church, painting an X-rated painting. And what she says, she addresses the Antichrist, and she is pissed. And that's interesting too. And let me just share with you something she says to the Antichrist here, because she addresses in the second person. Hold on a second. Here it is. The Antichrist, the son of injustice, the cursed one of the cursed ones. O you cave of injustice,
Oh,
your works seek the pit of hell. You will live absorbed in your gluttony there, and that hellish place will vomit forth stink. That's the merd that she's drawn there. The world
okay.
will recognize in this stench the bitterness of death, in the destroyer of destructions. You are the worst of beasts, etc. She's raging.
Okay.
And she's giving us permission to rage. Our third chakra, our moral outrage, should kick in at this time. All this BS we've been putting up with, the lies and the that Haitians are eating our pets, etc. This should get
I
us
know.
angry. We should do more than just laugh about it. Yeah,
Man.
laugh is part of it. But hey, you got to kick in emotion.
Oh man.
She took on popes, emperors, abbots, archbishops in her day. We have the letters that she wrote these
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
She wrote one pope and said, "You're surrounded by evil people," she said, "and do something," she
Yeah.
said, "and get off your throne and put justice first." And she told the emperor that he was like a baby, whining and complaining and not doing anything about justice. She was fierce.
Well, that's what
And
people are telling Trump these days.
there you go. That's the point. Exactly. These old lessons
That's
need to
exactly
come
what they're
back.
telling Trump.
You're us out. Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. There you go.
Okay. All right. Listen, thank you very much. I enjoyed talking to you, and I learned a whole lot, really.
Well, thank you, Bob. I'm glad you have a
And
platform like this
yeah,
where you can
it's a lot of
communicate.
fun. I enjoy it. I get to talk to really interesting people, and that's a cool thing. Hey, guys, Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this Lean to the Left video and you found it interesting and informative. Please visit on a regular basis and check out our interviews with guests on topics that focus on progressive politics and the important social issues of our time. Now, our interview shows stream on Mondays with special episodes on Thursdays. And follow us on social media. Facebook at Bob Gaddy and the Lean to the Left podcast. Now, it's two. Bob Gaddy is one Facebook page, and the Lean to the Left podcast is a second Facebook page. Twitter at Lean to the Left 1. Instagram at Lean to the Left 1. TikTok at Lean to the Left. LinkedIn at Bob Gaddy. And YouTube at Lean to the Left. Now, I hope you'll support Lean to the Left as well so we can keep things going. Just click on the Donate tab at the top of the leantotheleft.net homepage and contribute by buying me a cup of coffee. That'll really help and would be much, much, much appreciated. Now, this is Bob Gaddy signing off for Lean to the Left. Thanks for sharing your time with us.